of her statue. But I tell you, I was mortified. The people up there are trucking in water because they don't have the fundamental human right of water available to Pangaru. And where is the Far North District Council and the central government to alleviate that? And we all know who owns the water. It's Uncle Moka and Auntie Hine. We all know that. But they don't have the right to allocate how that water is being used. And in the meantime, it's been over-allocated for economic development while Māori people are going without. While Pākehā people are going without. Because it's not an issue that is actually easy for them to resolve, because it's about economic redistribution of wealth. And I can tell you, no one would have signed Te Tiriti if they contemplated a position where Māori would have nothing and everybody else would have everything. That is not what Te Tiriti is about. And we as a nation, a Māori nation, need to remind them that. And every year we come to Waitangi to remind them of that. And I know a lot of us go home to remind them of that. But too often we're little pockets. We're stuck in the iwi leaders paradigm of the iwi leaders will tell us what to do. Well, I'm sorry, mate. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. You're an iwi leader. Hello, I'm a leader. Look in the mirror. You look in the mirror. You are a leader. As Auntie Hina said, you're the minister of your own whānau. It's not iwi leaders that are going to lead us to the revolution. I'm sorry, mate. It's going to be ourselves that are going to lead the revolution. And that's because we are leaders. We are rangatira. We are the rangatira of our whānau. And we have to believe that. And we have to act like that. So my turn on the men. Men have beaten me up. They've smashed my teeth out in the name of love. That's not love. They have chosen to stand in places and call themselves iwi leaders when they've beaten me up. That's not leadership. That's abuse. And we as women will not tolerate that abuse. And men, you should not tolerate that from your brothers or your fathers or your uncles or your children. We have to join together to stop that abuse. But it is women that is feeling the brunt of that abuse. And we need to make sure we uplift the mana wahine that we all know exists, so they are rightfully respected. That's why Oranga Tamariki is so terrible. When they send in 14 armed policemen, they're not sending them into the Black Power leader. They're sending it into the Black Power leader's wife. They're attacking the woman. The Black Power leader's not even allowed in the room. They are sending 14 armed policemen to make an attack on the whare tangata. And we as Māori have to say that is unlawful. That is completely contrary to tikanga. And just because we have whānau members who sleep with gang members does not mean they have not the equal right to be respected for the dignity of women that they are and the birth givers they are for the next generation. And I want to remind you of that because everybody sees these pictures. Did you see many Māori men in that room? It was that woman that was there, that young girl surrounded by midwives. And it was armed policemen that were there to attack the dignity of her and her child. Now where was that in the papers? It was, oh, we shouldn't be doing this about Māori. But I tell you, Pākehā women, why weren't you saying, why are the state violence of the government being inflicted on vulnerable Māori women in this way? If it was a Pākehā woman that had been faced with that on the TV, would we still be waiting for a resolution now? That's the way racism works. It socialises us to actually isolate women from the rights, the fundamental human rights they have. And that's something that we as the Māori world and the Pākehā world need to address. The other thing I want to talk about too this year is the decade. It's a political party year, and I've missed the Māori Party and the Mana movement. I found the Labour Māori MPs so complicit that they almost have been silenced by their majority. Now that's really sad, because I remember the days of Maturata in the labour movement, and they couldn't silence him. It was through him and Pat Hohepa that we got the Waitangi Tribunal, after they listened to the strident calls of protesters like Ngā Tamatoa, like the Donna Awatere and Rebecca Evans and Hilda Haukyard that we heard about yesterday. But why do our politicians seem to be silenced by the veil of political bureaucracies governed by political parties, when they know they've been used to get those same parties into Parliament? So my challenge to those Māori MPs is, why are you silenced? Why aren't there targeted fundings for Māori? Why aren't there partnership arrangements where the Crown's not selecting the partners, but Māori are selecting our own individuals, being established as a matter of course? This is what happens in international arrangements. Why can't we do that here back home? Those are my challenges to those MPs. Nice listening to them yesterday, although Shane really pisses me off when he keeps making me sound that I'm just a putti. I don't even think he's got rugby balls between his ears. But you know, I'm sick of it. I'm not a flower arrangement, people, nor is Pania Newton. She is one of the most brave and courageous women of this century. So if you're going to call us flower arrangements, you better be careful, because I might just call you a vine that's wrapping yourselves under a noose under the kawanatanga, and I hope those prickles are strangling your throat. You're a weed. Your men like that are a weed. If they don't respect the women for the intelligence, the forthrightness, the courage, their ability they have, then they should shut up and sit down. They don't represent us. And he's not the only one. The Labour Party gets off because they've got their leader, who's a strident young person. But where's the Māori women in that leadership? They need to be putting up Nanaya, and they need to be putting up some of those young Māori women that I know have more intellect than some of those guys on the front row. And that's not happening. And why do we allow it to happen? Because our people say, that's kawa. Only men can sit in the front row and talk. Amen. But as I said, why do we permit men who speak English to speak over Māori women who can speak Māori? Why? Because we don't love our language enough? Because that's what it's about for me. I haven't fought for Te Reo Māori. I was a lawyer in the Te Reo Māori claim for 50 years. For us to go to a paipai and permit Māori men to speak Pākehā, while Māori women who can speak Māori are in the second row. If you're going to speak Pākehā, get to the second row. Move out. The last thing I think I need to say, this is a decade of change. We're going into places that our people have actually navigated. It's not happenstance. In the 1900s, there was a home rule movement led by fundamental people from up the north here. Mere Manakahia had started it with her Māori women's suffragette movement, but there were a number of speakers in the 1900s, the 1910s, promoting home rule, promoting our own independence. And we did that. And then we saw the worst of it was challenged, of course, in 1916 with the attack on Maunga Pohatu and Ruakenana. Because remember, that's what he was advocating at the early part of the 19th century. Māori independence, Māori home rule under the safety of Maunga Pohatu for his community. He had his own religion, his own shops, he had his own parliament, Te Wharepi. He was really clear that alternative institutions were what was needed. He was really clear that we should shut down prisons. He was really clear we should not fight white men's wars. He was really clear that we needed to protect the poor, the dispossessed, the homeless. They were his priority. Women without partners, pauari, and children without mothers and fathers. Where are those priorities in our own policy making now? I don't see them. What I saw in the paper yesterday was an iwi leader say, give up fighting on water and let's get $200 million in a whenua land money, and that will be the best way that we can look for the next 5 years to find an equivalence of rights with Pākehā. Well, as long as we accept that reductive thinking, we are giving up on the dreams of people like Ruakinana, like Te Puia. Those dreams have to find force in our lifetimes. I haven't fought as an activist for 40 years, not for me to give up now. I pay tribute to the kura that just stood, the kohanga reo and the kura movement that hasn't been loved and nurtured as it should have been for 40 years, that are struggling on the resources they have, that don't even have the classroom structures that other mainstream students have, that have to struggle all the time with the Ministry of Education to get access to funding as of right. But I pay tribute to them because they haven't given up, and they have created an army for the tino rangatiratanga movement and the generation of graduates from kohanga, kura kaupapa and whare wānanga that are sitting amongst us. That's the pride I see of the last 40 years of our movement. The regeneration of that. The fact that we can look to a paipai and see 26-year-old man speak in Te-Reo with honour and with knowledge about the intimacy of power relationships between Māori and the Crown, and not be frightened to confront how we shift that power. I also want to pay some real important honour to people like the Māori nurses, those that do the hard graft in the health system that are keeping us alive, those that work for our own hauora places on salaries less than what the nurses get in the DHBs. It's not right that a nurse that works for hauora gets 25 bucks, but if she goes to work for the DHB, she gets 40 bucks an hour. Why do Māori have to always be undercut for equal pay for equal rights? Don't say it's not happening. It's happening right now at Ngāti Hine. And they are the only group that's made a change. They've said to the DHB, we're going to pay our nurses the same pay as what you're paying the nurses in Whangarei, because we love our nurses because they love us. But how many of us around the motu are saying that in the health system? No, we allow them to keep putting lots of money into building hospitals that none of us can get to because we live too far away from them. And they won't even give us any money. So we need to pay homage to those that are looking at independent health care, health provision models. And they aren't necessarily fresh iwi leaders either. They're people like Auntie Hine. They're people from the Women's Health League and the Women's Welfare League who are committed to healthy whānau because they love their mokopuna and they want us to live long lives. Another group I want to pay homage to is sporting heroes. I have to say, I'm a Dame Nolene fan, whānau, okay? She's changed the world image of Māori women just by us winning the World Cup. And she comes from this marae. And she's a woman that's not frightened to confront anything. Whoever thought that she'd put a gay men's team against the New Zealand team, first of all to put up the gay men's team, yeah, and then to promote Māori women. Who else would do that? Nolene as an individual and the whole of those sporting heroes are creating spaces in leadership contexts that are really important. And she's proudly a tino rangatiratanga advocate as her father was. And we need more Nolenes of the world infiltrating rugby. I was hoping they might appoint a Māori rugby coach, but that's still a far away. Or in the rugby league world. But we need to be looking for those leadership models. Because who's actually got the magic? A lot of the tangata whenua bring the magic to that. And that magic needs to be captured in the imaginations of this country. Now my last kōrero
is we shouldn't just come to Waitangi, I think, to listen to us speak. We have to come here to strategize. I love the flag here. You know, if I ask, what do I want by 2040? I've always said, I want my country back. I want it to be governed under an arrangement that respects Te-Reo Waitangi as a constitutional foundation stone of us moving together. I want a country without jails. I'm really clear on this. We need to be working strategies to close down the jails by 2040. I want a country where our children are not in SIF's care. I don't want to fix up Oranga Tamariki. I want to shut the bloody thing down. And I want our kids out of those confines of imprisonment or incarceration and put into healthy context with whānau and extended whānau so that we create a generation of well-being. I want us to be really clear too for Māori women that in 2040 we will be equal decision makers in our whānau, in our hapu, and in our national institution arrangements. And that means you have to give up power. You have to get off those seats. You have to stop playing with your cell phones and actually start listening to the whai kōrero on the paipai. Because it's the women that are prompting a lot of the kōrero. And you need to give that up with humility. You need to say, ai, kei te pai. Let's have equal decision making so that we can hear many voices from both sides of the feminine and masculine divine to ensure that we can hear the mountains talk, as Uncle just heard. Kei he ngā kōrero o ngā maunga. So you need to hear the mountains talk. They're not just male mountains. Ever told you that's a lot of crap? There's a feminine part of the mountains. We need to hear that feminine divine. We need to listen to the waters speak to us. There's hine moana and hine wainui in those waters. And we need to make that commitment as the Māori nation, and we need to educate non-Māori to that position. And it's really important because the patriarchal systems that have been incorporated here since the Victorian times were brought to us, enforced on us by statute, and we need to get rid of that legislation. So I said I was going to talk 5 minutes and I raved on, but hang on. My last, I've just been reminded, Moana Jackson's not here with us, and he's normally our kind of mentor here today. So I want us to give a bit of a shout out to a brother Mo who can't be here. He's had a really struggle in the last 12 months with getting a report out that attacks the criminal justice system. And I know that there are speakers today that are following us that are going to talk about how rotten to the core that system is. But Moana's suffering a little bit from ill health, so I want us all to have spirit kariki or some thought for him today. But he inspired me on the treaty analysis, and he inspires me on the constitutional debate. He says we must always ask for the power to define our reality. We must not ask them to give our power back, but we must take the power back so that we can shape the institutions that we want. They don't give it back to us, it's ours to take back. We must use the power of imagination to dream the dreams, but not just leave it in the dream world, to make it happen in our realities. And that power of making it happen requires the power to unite for justice. Not the justice that the Pākehā permit, but the justice that the treaty promised. So on those notes, which I caught it off from my mate, I wish us all well. I don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow. We'll be here, I think, in the morning. But we've got kapahaka for Mātātua regionals, and we're supporting Opotiki Mai Tawhiti tomorrow. So we're going home to make sure that they take it out. But I do want to say to the people of Te Tai Tokerau and the people of Ngāti Kawa, Ngāti Rahiri, Ngāti Manu, Ngāti Patukeha, koutou mā o tēnei whenua rangatira, ngā mihi ki a koutou, ngā mihi ki tō tātou nei treaty, ngā mihi ki te wairua pūmau e moe ana I te treaty kei te oho. I tēnei tau, mō tātou katoa. Kia ora.